Okay, hey everyone. I am going to talk to you about the lab. If you were having some issues with it, hopefully this will help explain it. We are not going to be using, obviously, our spirometer. That's the instrument that we would use if we were in class and we'd breathe in and out of that. We're modifying this quite a bit. Your tidal volumes would be measured. Those get measured here. So these would be your normal tidal breaths as you start the lab. You just breathe normally. This is the period where you'd be holding your breath. Okay? And then notice how this spikes right after you've held your breath. And notice that the frequency of breaths has increased from before and after. Those waves got a little bit closer together. So in the first part of the lab, part one, what I'm going to have you do is basically ignore the bulk of the instructions, and you're just going to start by, let's take a look at this. We're going to go to the data table because I think that'll explain it the best. So here on table one, we have a before challenge, and we have an after challenge. The challenge is holding your breath. Okay? So you're going to hold your breath for 40 seconds. Before you do that, we want to measure your respiratory rate. Your tidal volume is going to be 0.5. We're just going to use that as a standard for everybody, even though everyone would be different. But we're going to do 0.5 because we don't have a way for you guys to measure this at home. So everywhere that you see tidal volume, we're going to assume it's 0.5 liters. Okay? So when we do this, we are going to, again, measure respiratory rate before, and we're going to measure respiratory rate after. Your respiratory rate is literally just counting how many breaths you're going to take in 1 minute. So set your timer, let it run for a minute, and count how many times you inhale and exhale in that minute. So 1 inhale, 1 exhale, that's 1 breath. If we had a respiratory rate of, before the challenge, of 16 breaths per minute. Okay, I'm not going to write that out. I don't have that much room. So if we had 16 breaths per minute, our initial minute ventilation is the tidal volume times the respiratory rate. So we take 16 times 0.5, and we're going to get 8 liters per minute. That's how much air is exchanged every time you breathe. Or, I'm sorry, in a minute during normal breathing, okay? So you're exchanging 8 liters every minute. Then we're going to force you to hold your breath for as long as you can, up to 40 seconds. And let's say your respiratory rate increases, and it should. I'm sure it will. Let's say it goes up to 20 breaths per minute. We multiply those two together, and we end with 10 liters per minute. Okay? So our minute ventilation, we have exchanged now 10 liters per minute as opposed to 8 liters per minute before we held our breath. Then you're going to go to the second part of the lab, part 2 of the lab. Part 2 is going to be rapid breathing. Notice everything's going to be 40 seconds. You're going to force yourself to hyperventilate. You're going to take your breaths per minute before, maybe give yourself a little bit of a break in between the first and second part, and you're going to do the same thing. Measure the respiratory rate, multiply it by the tidal volume, get your initial minute volume, which will go there. You're going to hyperventilate for 40 seconds. If you feel like you're getting tired or you're going to pass out, then obviously stop. But your respiratory rate after the challenge, and tell us what that is, and multiply it again by 0.5 to get your minute ventilation. Then you're going to go to the third part. It says table 2 for exercise. Oops. Table 2 says exercise. This is part 3 of the lab. Okay. Now again, we're changing the instructions a little bit. You're not using the spirometer. You're at home. We're going to do this for 40 seconds again. You're going to have a before challenge, during the challenge, and after challenge on this one. Okay. So before the challenge, we're going to again use 0.5 liters. We'll use it here because again, we don't have a way to measure that without our instruments. Get your respiratory rate before, get your respiratory rate during the 40 seconds of challenge, okay, and convert that to breaths per minute. If you want to exercise for 1 minute and make it easier, that's fine. You can do 1 minute. Oops, let me erase that. We could do 1 minute of exercise on this one instead. That way your respiratory rate's easy. If you count how many breaths you take during that challenge, I know it's going to be, you'll have the timer going, you're going to be exercising. Maybe you can have someone else count your breaths. Maybe they can tell. I mean, just by watching your chest moving in and out, that will help count the breaths. You're going to then, again, multiply this number times this number to get your minute ventilation, and then do the same thing after the challenge. Okay, that's all you're doing for today is collecting your data. So you get both of these data tables filled out, 3 different challenges, and that's going to be it for today. Okay, what we're analyzing, what we're looking at, change it, let's do red here. We're looking for these values. Minute ventilation before and after. Okay, and same thing down here. We're focused on what is your minute ventilation before, during, and after on this one. How does your breathing rate change? How much air are you exchanging during those activities? And then Thursday this week, I'm going to have a video for you on free diving, where I'll talk about what free divers will do to try to help themselves hold their breath a little bit longer, and some of the dangers actually of free diving as well. Okay, so hopefully that helps. If you didn't join us on either of our 2 Zoom meetings, you can check this out, and hopefully that helps.